to give your 3-minute introduction, your 3-minute spiel, if you will, about why you're the best candidate for the 10th District. And then I would just ask you to take a seat behind your sign back there. We will then ask each candidate, one by one, an individual question, discrete questions, 3 times, a round of 3 rounds of questions. We will then, the candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each of those questions. You can stay in your seat for those. The mic should be on. And then we'll have one question that all the candidates will be answering, and I'll just draw names out of a hat to who goes first on that one. So without further ado, I don't think the order matters at this point. Okay. By the way, Drew, this is an important point. Drew Cooney back in the back with the purple shirt. He's our timer, and Drew is ruthless. And I know sometimes people in the political world have a penchant for speaking, but once you see that sign, just take a few seconds, please, and wrap up your comments. Okay.
I'm going to give you a 1-minute notice, a 30-second notice, a 15-second notice.
And the gong, and then the shepherd's crook, if that doesn't work.
At which time Dan will have to.
That's right. Oh, one other thing before we get started, something very important I do not want to forget. We're in the middle of a very important raffle for the Manassas Tea Party fundraiser that we're expecting. Well, we know that it's going to bring in a lot of needed funds for us. We have a mission to educate our neighbors in the city and the county about the importance of liberty, which shockingly, many people just don't appreciate the liberties that we have. They take them for granted. And so we need to communicate that message. And so part of this fundraiser is going to help us execute that. So we are raffling off a beautiful ladies self-defense package that includes a Glock 42, 380, fits very nicely in a purse. It's also going to come with training, as well as range, time, and ammunition. So the tickets are only $10 a piece. We're only raffling off there are only going to be 500 tickets in the drawing, and so your odds are pretty good. So for that lady in your life that you want to have that self-defense for, we'd ask you to see our ladies in the back there. Yes, Drew.
And all of Dan referred to as a women's self-defense package. This is a very nice gun that I would be proud to carry. So it's, don't let that get to you.
Yeah. It could be a manly gun too. That's right. Okay, we're going to get started. I'm just going to start down here with the sign. Actually, I'll start here so that we don't have people running into each other. Mr. Rob Wassinger, if you would come up, please. There he is.
Good. Hey, thank you all for coming out tonight. This election, I think, is absolutely critical. We're in the midst, nationally, I believe, of a political revolution. And I think Virginia has a choice and a chance now to kind of join that revolution or go with another establishment candidate that's been handpicked by the folks in D.C. We can join Scott Walker, who's bravely battling the corrupt unions in Wisconsin, who've been bilking us out of millions of dollars. Rand Paul, who's protecting our privacy and fighting against Obamacare. We heard Obama earlier today talking about the 7 million enrollees that he's hit his mark. Well, that's nonsense. Those aren't people that didn't have insurance. Those are people that lost their coverage because of Obamacare. We need to go out there and repeal Obamacare. I don't think we need to save parts of it. We need to just get rid of the whole thing. We've got other great leaders like Tom Coburn, who's battling all the corrupt spending out of Washington. Just last year, the International Trade Association gave a grant of $300,000 to the American Independent Music Association so they could go on a world tour promoting independent music. This is an industry that got $7.1 billion in revenue last year. I don't know why they need my money or your money to do this. The spending's crazy, and it's not just the Democrats that are participating in all this wasteful spending, all this garbage. It's Republicans. It's the establishment. they all set together and, you know, cook up their schemes, and they go out and spend our money on these ridiculous programs. And we've got a chance now to, you know, to take our country back, fight against this wasteful spending, cut Obamacare, cut taxes, get spending under control. And the choices, I think, in this race are pretty clear. And there is an establishment candidate to run it, and there's a lot of great options out there. So this is the year for your voice to be heard and to take the seat back. It doesn't belong to the establishment, it belongs to you. This is your chance to take it back. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the debate.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to ask Delegate Bob Marshall to come up and give his address.
I'm Delegate Bob Marshall. I was elected 23 years ago, and some Democrats claimed they went into the polling booth and crossed over to help me. If they did that, they have rued that day ever since. I won in a four-way race, being what was called the establishment candidate at that time. I've served you in that capacity. I have won 13 elections. I've been outspent 4-1. I'm the only person who's won that many elections in Northern Virginia. Barack Obama won my district by 11 percentage points. There is no district in Northern Virginia where there's a Republican office holder in which a Democrat, the Democrat president, has won by such a large margin, except mine. In Delegate Comstock District, Obama and the Governor Romney were tied. I've represented 1/3 of the 10th Congressional District in my time in the Assembly. My district shifted from Lake Ridge over to the other side of Route 7. I wrote the law that Ken Cuccinelli used to sue Barack Obama. So while others tell you they're going to fight Obamacare, I led the effort in Virginia. I also introduced a statute, which the Republican leadership doesn't want to hear because they're afraid of controversy, to say that nobody should have their religious liberties violated or their conscience violated by being compelled to purchase abortion pills or birth control or whatever. Just leave people alone. You can buy birth control pills for $9 a month at Walmart. Just leave businesses and people who have a conscience problem alone about that. I put citizens first, not a clique enrichment, and I won't do that in Washington. I sued the Democrat governor, the Republican speaker, the Republican attorney general, because they all supported a statute that set up unelected, I call it Pontius Pilate, taxing authorities, because they washed their hands of it, and people who were never elected to office were given power to raise your taxes. I was the only member of the General Assembly, one of 140, to sue. I lost at the local court level here. I won at the Virginia Supreme Court 7-0. Taxation without representation is still illegal in Virginia because I fought for you. In 1996, I got a law passed which Governor Allen signed and Jim Gilmore had to defend. It took pornography off state computers. Who sued? You know who sued, the ACLU. A woman lawyer came down from New York City thinking she's going to instruct Virginians on the First Amendment. Remember James Madison? Did you ever hear of him? Well, I lost at the district court level. I won at the three-bank Court of Appeals, 3 judges. I won in bank. She said, well, surely she'll win in the U.S. Supreme Court. She lost. You don't see too many legislators who beat the ACLU on First Amendment in the United States Supreme Court. I am one of them. I have never voted for a tax increase. I have worked to help you regain control of your government. I authored the law which said nobody in Virginia will cooperate with the federal government, and nobody's going to continue talking anymore. I see a stop sign up there. So,
Move this because we don't need any lawsuits. We've got plenty of seats up here, folks, so feel free. It's not sure to take advantage of the. Next is going to be Howie Lynn. Here he is.
I'd like to walk around a little bit, so take the mic up. Thank you, Dan, for hosting this event tonight, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming. It's great to be with you tonight. My name is Howie Lynn, and I'm running for the 10th Congressional District seat of our Congressman Frank Wolf. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to take a stand. I'm running for the United States Congress because it's time to take a stand against Barack Obama's destruction of our country, economically, militarily, culturally. It's time to take a stand against his radical left-wing agenda and his massive spending and debt. It's time to stand up and rip Obamacare out by the roots. Some people say we can't do that. Yes, we can. We're Americans. We can do that. Let me switch gears on something as equally as important. I'm the only military veteran in this race. As your congressman, I will stand up to ensure our national defense and military remain strong. Notice recently the huge defense cuts to the United States Army. I will stand to ensure we keep strong. As your congressman, I'll demand the answers we deserve on Benghazi. Yes, on Benghazi, okay? Frank Wolf has been the leader in the Congress to get the Special Investigative Committee in place. He's been stopped by one man. You know who it is, right? Speaker John Boehner. Speaker John Boehner has been standing in the way of this Special Investigative Committee. I recently signed a letter to Speaker Boehner requesting, demanding that he set up this committee so we can get to the bottom of who killed. The terrorists still have not been held to account over there. The cover-up has not been uncovered back here yet. My background uniquely qualifies me for this office for the times we live in right now. I'm honored to have served as a naval officer for 20 years, leading young men and women around the world on difficult and demanding missions. I later served as your 10th Congressional District Chairman and as your representative of the State Central Committee, and I've fought for conservatives and for conservatism across Virginia for many, many years. That is the leadership from those experiences that I bring to this office today, not Washington, D.C. If you want your representative to go to Washington to be the go along, get along, John Boehner inside crowd, that's not me. If you want your representative to go there to fight against the Obama agenda, then I ask for your vote on April 26th at the Firehouse primary. I'm going to deviate from my normal speech for a minute because something is very important going on tonight. See the names up there? One person noticeably absent. All right? She has a conflict tonight. Okay, Delegate Comstock has a conflict tonight. Every single Tea Party event that we go to, all of us, she's not there. Know this. The Northern Shenandoah Valley Tea Party and the Apple Valley Tea Party specifically combined a meeting last month for her to come to speak. She accepted it. She didn't show. No good reason. Her supporters in Congress, John Boehner, Eric Cantor, Paul Ryan, have endorsed her. They're endorsing a pact to defeat Tea Party candidates. They want to get rid of Rand Paul. I'm saying stop, okay. And all the others, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee. Not me. I'm the strong Tea Party candidate, Ron Wilcox. Ray, thank you for your support over the years. And Rick Buchanan, number 2 Tea Party leader in the state, supporting me. I ask for your vote on April 26th. Thank you very much. God bless each of you for being here, and God bless our great country. Thank you.
Thanks, Howie. Dr. Stephen Hollingshead.
Stephen Hollingshead, thanks very much for coming tonight. You know, there's been a lot of talk this month about economic sanctions. And it reminds me of back when the Congress was debating economic sanctions against Panama. Remember what President Reagan said? He said, well, if the Congress wants to bring the Panamanian economy to its knees, why doesn't it just get down there and run the country? He put his finger on exactly the problem that we have today. When the government tries to run everything, it screws everything up. We've got an unprecedented abuse of power in Washington these days. And everybody telling everybody what to do all the time, everybody being so bossy all the time. You know, you can't make light bulbs like Edison did. Cost 300 jobs here in the 10th district. You can't make a toilet that actually flushes. You can't serve soda in a cup that big. But don't worry, you can keep your health plan. I mean, they just keep telling everybody what to do. It has wrecked our economy. We've got the highest youth unemployment in ages. We've got, you know, weakness, where our weak economy is telegraphing weakness all over the world. So we see this saber rattling. And here at home, we've got a government that spies on us. We need somebody, you know, we need somebody to go across that river and stand up to the Washington establishment that's letting all this go on, and stand up to the career politicians in both parties, and stand up especially to Barack Obama and say, stop it. We don't need you running our lives. We're not children. We don't want your meddling. We don't want your coddling. We don't need your bullying, so stop it. Now, I know we've got a lot of good candidates in this race, a lot of good choices. Why am I the right guy to represent you in Congress? I think it's perspective. My dad started with a machine shop. and he and Mom built a company that sells products all over the world. And like my dad, I'm a businessman. I have operated or owned companies in manufacturing, food distribution, management consulting. I have created jobs, I have met payrolls outside the Beltway Fantasyland. I know how government regulation and taxation kill jobs before they're born. Today, I'm on the board of a national financial services firm that does business in more than 3,000 communities across the United States. I'm also the only candidate in this race who has ever reformed any government. I took my business experience to Washington. President Bush appointed me as the senior advisor to 3 HUD secretaries, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Enforcement, and I ran the President's management agenda for HUD, and we found and we stopped $2 billion a year in welfare fraud that was going on in HUD. Third thing that's different about me, I'm the only candidate in this race who has taught the Constitution of the United States. Back before I was a businessman, that was my day job. I taught the Constitution and the American founding. I know the springs of liberty and free enterprise that made this country great in the first place, and if you want somebody to go over there and make Barack Obama stop it, please send me to Congress on April 26th and November 8th. Thank you.
Delegate Rich Anderson is here on behalf of Barbara Comstock. Delegate Anderson, thank you. That hole in the floor.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here, and I am not a candidate for the United States Congress. But the 10th Congressional District is blessed by a half dozen individuals who are fully equipped to represent our party positions, all conservatives. So I am not here to speak against anyone. I'm here to speak for a basic belief system. And tonight I would like to tell you just a few things about my classmate in the Virginia House of Delegates, and that is Delegate Barbara Comstock. Barbara was elected the same year I was, 2009, and first sworn in 2010. Today, she chairs the House Committee on Science and Technology, where I also serve, and she has done a number of things in her life that I believe qualifies her for higher and finer service to our country. She has lived in Northern Virginia for 30 years with her husband Chip, who is a educator in the in the Fairfax County Public School System, and they've raised their 3 children there. She has served as a senior aide to Congressman Frank Wolf, Chief Counsel on the House Government Oversight Committee, a senior official in the Department of Justice, a senior partner in a law firm, and as I said before, in the House, she chairs one of our 11 standing House committees. I believe that she will continue Frank Wolf's work in fighting the crime of human trafficking. She has a track record for that. And she will definitely hold this presidential administration accountable for the Benghazi attacks. And that speaks to an individual who wore an Air Force uniform for 30 years. She has been endorsed by Mark Levin and Tim Phillips of the Americans for Prosperity. In the House of Delegates, she's provided tax relief and tax credits for hardworking families. She has patroned legislation to nurture the billion-dollar data center industry here in the Commonwealth. She has wrote Virginia's competitive bidding law, saving several $1 million in Phase 2 of the Dulles Rail Project, and legislation guaranteeing the right to secret ballots in the workplace. And so for that reason, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and speak on behalf of Barbara Comstock. Thank you.
Mr. Mark Savage.
I'll try not to do my Chevy Chase impression here today. I'm Mark Savitt. I'm a little different than the other candidates out there, not the way Howie thinks. I'm different that I've never worked for the government. I have been in a small business owner for almost 30 years. I own a business out in the other side of the mountain in the valley, Shenandoah Valley. I have a second job, although I don't get paid for that job. I'm not a lobbyist, but I have been the president of 2 national trade associations that protect you up on Capitol Hill. I have testified before Congress 10 times. I have gone up against people like Barney Frank, Chris Dodd, Maxine Waters, Chuck Schumer, and the rest of the gang up there. I have stood up to them, I have been respectful when I have testified, but I have stood up to them, and I have always defended our position. The position I've taken is to defend small business and consumers. Now, a lot of things have happened in Washington over the past several years, particularly the past 5 years, and I think we know who was in office during the past 5 years. We have a rogue, not just different agencies that are rogue, we have a rogue government, we have a rogue administration. We have a president that wouldn't know the Constitution if he fell over it, and this is a man that supposedly taught the Constitution. We have an agency that was created by the Dodd-Frank Act. Anybody ever hear of the Dodd-Frank Act? Dodd-Frank created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This agency has no oversight. They can do whatever they want. They have a director that is more like a dictator. They're going after they're going after small business, they're going after banks for things that were supposedly done 10 years ago. They have rules and regulations that will prevent half the people in this room from getting a mortgage because the restrictions are so tight. Some of the other things I want to talk about. You know, you look at, we all talk about career politicians. It's okay to be against career politicians, but you have to go one step further. You have to be for term limits. We have too many career politicians in Washington. They're there 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I made a statement, not meaning it to be a joke at our first debate, and I said the place has turned into a retirement home, and it really has up there. We have other issues that we need to be concerned about. We need to be protecting our borders. We have an issue where there's between 12 and 20 illegal aliens in this country, and we have to do something about that. Secure the borders, number one. No amnesty, number two. The last thing is, we were talking about Benghazi here a few minutes ago, and also the IRS. And by the way, I think one of our candidates here is the lowest learner of the 10th District congressional race, because she makes speeches sometimes and then doesn't stick around for questions. And this has happened more than once, and I thank you for bringing that up, Howard. So anyway, I look forward to your support and your vote on April the 26th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sabat. Okay, a couple of points of order that I neglected to mention before. We are also going to go through these rounds of questions that we've come up with, and then for a period, we'll see how much time we have. We'd like to open up the microphone to anyone in the audience to ask questions of the candidates as well. Okay, I'm just going to start with you, Mr. Wassinger, since you're right there next to me. Let's see. Mr. Wassinger, given the number of conservatives running for the GOP nomination in the 10th District, some of them known quantities and longtime residents of the state, what is it in your background that makes you the best conservative choice for the nomination? And you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. It's a good question. There are a lot of great conservatives up here and running for the 10th congressional seat. I've spent most of my career fighting alongside some of the great conservatives on Capitol Hill. I was the Chief of Staff for U.S. Senator Sam Branbeck, and during my time with him, we fought against human cloning, embryonic stem cell research. We fought to cut taxes. We fought against the marriage penalty. And my background was on taxes and economic policy, and so I worked on a lot of those issues with him over the years. I recently just finished up a stint on Capitol Hill as Chief of Staff for a great Tea Party congressman out of Michigan's 11th District, Congressman Kerry Bentivolio. And I think kind of a critical difference here in the race is I don't think it's the resume that matters so much of the individual candidates. I think it's the courage to fight against the establishment. I've been there. I'm not going to succumb to their cocktail circuit and all the backroom dealings that Boehner and Cantor like to throw on to whip everybody into line. I'm a real independent voice, and I think liberty and freedom need to be restored. We need to take our country back and our government back. And most of my career I've been fighting to do exactly that. And the other candidates up here have done similarly great things. But I do think it comes down to courage to fight against the establishment and not to buckle. And just restating again, I think the choice this time is critical. It's a unique opportunity to take our district for conservatives, for liberty, for freedom, and not to go with an establishment candidate like Barbara Comstock, who the establishment is clearly anointed as their go-to person. She's worked as a corporate lobbyist, taking our tax money for all sorts of boondoggles across the entire country, and she's completely compromised on her record. And now's the time to take the seat for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Marshall, you are known, among other things, for your work on social issues in the State House, and you have a number of critics who accuse you of being too extreme to appeal to enough voters in the 10th District to win the general election. How do you respond?
Well, then, I'm very similar to that known extremist, Ronald Reagan, whose position on abortion is identical to mine. And if you remember Reagan's thinking about this, he talked about social issues, he talked about economic issues, he talked about military foreign affairs issues. And he said the Republican Party is like a three-legged stool. It needs all three of these supports to field winning candidates. I have never been embarrassed about this. Like Reagan, he never backed away from this once he was president. I have never altered my views on this. I have no intention to do it. I did medical research for about 23 years, and I say, bring on the social issues. I'm very familiar with the statistical abstract of the United States and with the medical complications from induced abortion. You cannot win this seat if you do not have social issue background. The hardest workers that I have ever found are the people with the homeschoolers and the right to lifers, and then a little bit after that were the Second Amendment people. I've never compromised on that. I've narrowed my focus to apply a principle in that area, and I've actually reached out on some of these. I chaired the Virginia General Assembly's Stem Cell Commission for 3 years. I was able to get Dick Saslaw to agree with me, who's a very liberal, that we should not fund embryonic stem cell research. I was able to override governors 3, maybe 4 times, one of which was a bill that says we're not going to have pornography given to kids in their emails. I overrode Jim Gilmore on that. I overrode Mark Warner on a social issue on we're not going to recognize out-of-state civil unions. I overrode him on partial birth abortion. You don't do that by luck. You do it by getting people together at a practical level, including Democrats, to vote for what you're doing.
Thank you, Delegate Marshall. Mr. Lind, one of your opponents in the primary is obviously Barbara Comstock. You have been quoted as saying you were responsible for recruiting Delegate Comstock to run for the House of Delegates in 2008.
So you're the one.
Is that accurate? And if so, how do you reconcile opposing a candidate whom you encouraged to enter Virginia statewide politics in the first place?
Great question.
Thank you.
Actually, I've been asked it many times. Little history lesson. Okay, so 2008 is rolling along. We've got John McCain running for president, okay, against Barack Obama. That whole year of 2008, Frank Wolf was asking me, badgering me to run for the House of Delegates that year to run against Margie Vanderhyde, the current Democrat House of Delegate member. I thought about it carefully all year. Late that fall, I decided not to, and literally standing in the rain at November, whatever, of 2008 at Langley High School with an umbrella and Barbara Comstock next to me, handing out McCain and Gilmore and Wolf stuff. I said, Barbara, would you like to run for the House of Delegates? Frank Wolf is, and I basically told her the same story, and she said, what? Okay. Anyway, long story. We had a meeting with Frank Wolf, and she ran, and she's done her great thing. That was about the second part of the question, okay? What's happened in the last 5 years? She's been in Richmond, great, okay? This race, though, this time in our lives, as we've said already, is an establishment versus non-establishment nation, not just, 10th District of Virginia. It's across this country. There's bitter fights within the Republican Party right now. Like I said in my talk, Eric Cantor, John Boehner, Paul Ryan, and others are funding a PAC to defeat Tea Party candidates. It's abomination to me. And those are people supporting her. She has all the established support. I mean, you get all her emails, it's like a long list of everybody in the world endorsing her. Doesn't matter. I want your endorsement. This is what I say to every Tea Party, every committee I speak to. You're the endorsees that I want. When I'm door knocking with people, they say, great radio ads, great TV ads. And we're doing that. We're moving out. Again, I'm the non-establishment conservative who can win in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Langford. Delegate Anderson, I think most in this room would agree that one of the biggest challenges constitutional-minded, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't have my glasses on when I started reading.
Walk past that mirror, see if you see a reflection.
I'll answer Barbara's question.
How about this one? You worked in the Bush administration, Dr. Hollingshead, for the then Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Ronald Reagan once said that government is not the solution to our problem, government is the problem. Do you consider yourself an outsider or an insider, and how would you seek to shrink the bureaucracy in which you used to work?
Well, when I ran 20 years ago and was the youngest winner of a federal primary in American history, I ran on a platform of eliminating HUD. When I went back to Wisconsin, made a speech there, I said, well, wait a minute, now you work there. Do you still think it should be eliminated? Absolutely. Why would you go to work there? Well, because I didn't have a phone and a pen to change the law, and the place was going to exist. What I did do is work there and help to reform the place, wiped out an enforcement backlog that was 5 years long in 18 months, and I coordinated the president's management agenda. We stopped $2 billion a year of welfare fraud that was going on. So even though the thing shouldn't exist, it's not constitutional, it's a local issue. It should be sent back to the states to deal with. We need people who can go there and understand that and work to make the government smaller. So I've worked in the executive branch, that's true. Wasn't always listened to, particularly at the end of 2008 in some of the things that we did. But we need somebody to legislate, somebody in the legislative branch who actually believes in the Constitution of the United States, who believes that your job is to go down Article 1, Section 8, read the enumerated powers of the federal government, and see what you can do about getting rid of the rest of it.
Thank you. Delegate Anderson, let me try again. I think most in this room would agree that one of the biggest challenges constitutional-minded Americans face is activist judges who often override the will of the people in order to drive their own political agenda. States have passed laws with overwhelmingly popular support to enforce everything from protection of preborn life to the traditional family and marriage to the sovereignty of our borders, and they've been struck down by judges who thought they knew better than the people. How can Delegate Comstock reconcile her claim to being a conservative when she voted to place Judge Tracy Thorne-Beglin on the General District Court in Richmond, when it was well known that Thorne-Beglin sat on the Board of Equality Virginia and had worked for the Human Rights Campaign?
Well, first of all, obviously I can't speak to every nuance of every issue regarding Delegates Comstock. But I would, based on my observation of that 2012 vote, I believe that there was a necessity or a feeling on her part to represent what she was hearing from a majority of folks in her district. I know how I voted. I voted in accordance with my own beliefs and what I was hearing back home in the 51st House District, which runs from Occoquan out to Noakesville. And so I believe that that was the driver for Barbara at the time that she took that vote.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sabat, there's a survey that is sent to candidates. It's called the Numbers USA survey, and you did not fill it out, and it deals with positions on immigration. And I know you spoke about illegal immigration earlier. We weren't able to find a lot about illegal immigration on your website. Where do you stand on granting amnesty of any sort to those who cut in line to come to America?
Well, first of all, I don't remember seeing a survey, but I filled out a lot of surveys, and if I had seen it, I obviously would have filled it out like I did all of the others. My position has been very clear on immigration. First thing is, we need to secure our borders. My fear is not just the individual that is coming across the border for a better life, or people that overstay their either their work visas or their student visas, but it's the terrorists coming across the border that scares me and scares a lot of people. As far as amnesty goes, back in, we were quoting President Reagan before, back when President Reagan was in office in 1986, we as a country granted 3 million illegal aliens amnesty. I didn't agree with it. At the time, the president said, this is it, no more. Well, no more is no more. And I firmly believe that there should be no amnesty. There's between 12 and 20 million illegal aliens in this country that take jobs away from people. And it also is not right for them to be here and be not just taking jobs away, but also for the people that have come here legally, and just about everybody in this room, not just about everybody in this room, their ancestors came here. They came here legally, and I think it's wrong that if this country does grant amnesty, and I would be opposed to it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wassinger, you mind if we just do round robin here, back to you? So we all talk about repealing Obamacare. I hope we're all talking about that. The question becomes, after repeal, how do we undo the damage of Obamacare? And how do we address the problems of making health care accessible?
Yeah, good question. I agree with Howie. We've got to just pull this thing up by the roots. There's no fixing it or saving it. There's no talking about good elements in it. It just has to be repealed altogether. Then I think we probably have to go to something that gets the private marketplace involved, not the government. So some good ideas that have been floated in the past, health savings accounts. Again, you want the private marketplace to be driving the conversation, not the government. Because once the government gets involved, that's the price driver in and of itself. We also have to connect the decision to seek health care with the price of health care. It's become so disconnected over the years, where you get people running in to the doctor for every little thing, and that drives up costs, and they have a $50 deductible, and so there's no connection with the decision to seek health care with the price that they pay for it. So we need to get that decision closer together. And then we can look at other things. Obviously, insurance companies want to, pool the risk, and so they have an incentive to exclude people with certain pre-existing conditions, and that's not right. So we have to go and address those things too. But we need to have a conversation with the country where everybody's participating in it. The way Obamacare happened was in the middle of the night, basically. It was after the country had already spoken by electing a Republican in the state of Massachusetts. It was the last time that happened. And that state was clearly in opposition to Obamacare. So we need to, get everybody back to the table and talk about it. But the first step in this process is repealing Obamacare and pulling it up by the roots.
Thank you. Delegate Marshall, if you were elected to Congress, what would your top 3 priorities be?
I don't get that question.
No. You can talk about anything you want, but maybe this is one of your priorities. I don't know.
No, I'm sorry.
What are your top 3 priorities if you're elected to Congress?
Well, to get people on record on death, to find ways to repeal this Obamacare, which is not going to be easy, because if you remember reading the New Testament, Christ talks about somebody wants to pull out all the weeds. Well, beyond a certain point, it gets hard to do that. So we're going to have to find very crafty and prudential ways to pull back on this without enmeshing additional people. I mean, the first thing I would do along those lines, I would cut funding for Planned Parenthood. They clearly have been costing the United States a lot of money. And with respect to medicine, part of medicine, the expense is driven by what's called defensive medicine, where doctors, and I can't really criticize them, are engaged in what's called defensive medical practices. In other words, they order extra tests, they order extra consultations, because we have the trial lawyers hair-triggered to sue anybody at the least chance. A way around this, and again, if you're crafting legislation, I would not, there's an indirect way to avoid a fight directly on tort reform. And that is what I have done this year. And I've introduced legislation which is supported by the incoming president of the Virginia Medical Society, or Medical Society of Virginia. And what it said was, if a doctor gives so much medical care, indigent medical care, then the state of Virginia, the Attorney General, will back him or her for their medical malpractice. Now, what this would mean is, you won't be ordering extra tests because you don't have to, because someone's not going to sue. Some individual's going to have to go up against the Attorney General's office. They have a lot of attorneys. You won't be ordering extra consultations. So the price of medical care will go down both for private and for public. This would bring medicine back to where it was in the early 1950s, when the mission of a doctor was to heal, not to fill out papers.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lynn, you have said that there are entire agencies that have outlived their usefulness. Please name 3 agencies that you would eliminate and the impact that that would have. That's what we call the Ray question.
Name 3, not 2 or 1. Department of Education, IRS, EPA. Now let me talk about some other things. Those are all, I mean, as Ken Cuccinelli was always great at saying, I'll steal from him, the Employment Prevention Agency, EPA. It's wrecking our economy, along with Obamacare, wrecking our economy, causing businesses, it's just unneeded. Department of Education, Common Core, it's the Obamacare of education, reaching from Washington, D.C. to every schoolhouse in the country. Don't need that. IRS, I mean, it's just, to this group, to the Tea Party group, to these conservatives across this country who still are being targeted by the IRS, it's just terrible. Let me shift topics to illegal immigration while I have the mic here for a second, because that shows you in Congress right now how broken our conservative versus establishment situation is. John Boehner, Eric Cantor, Paul Ryan, and 17 other Republicans in the House of Representatives are trying to jam through this amnesty bill along with 198 Pelosi Democrats. What in the world is going on? John Boehner is leading in the wrong direction. If he just did nothing, it'd be okay. But try to do that, it's terrible. Why is he doing it? I don't know. I talk about John Boehner every place I go. It's not personal. I've met him, I don't know him. He's not leading this House of Representatives. He's not our party leader. I mean, people ask me all the time, what do? Elect someone else. Trey Gowdy. There's a bunch of names out there that can lead this party, our party, in the House of Representatives. National defense. I got 15 seconds left. We'll probably get to that, but huge priority for me. Our country is adrift, foreign policy-wise, military-wise. Our military morale, the depth hasn't been this low in who knows how long. It's in bad shape. It needs to be fixed, and I, as your congressman, will try to fix that. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Hollingshead, you've said that Washington is broken. I don't think you'll find much disagreement here in the room. Tell us the 3 major ways that it is broken and the ways that you intend to fix it.
Wow, 3. Let me say, the main way that it's broken is that we don't follow the Constitution of the United States. If we did that, it would fix a lot of the other problems, a lot of the other brokenness. I mean, but notions of limited government. I said it in my opening remarks. The fundamental problem with government today is that everybody's trying to tell everybody else what to do all the time. It's like we don't believe in liberty anymore. 39% of our GDP is now government. 39%. I still teach for fun adjunct at Georgetown. I teach card-carrying communists, members of the Chinese government, to come over here and to learn about the Constitution and federalism. And do you know that in communist China, they spend 21% of their GDP on government? We spend 39%. So if we get back to following, I mean, maybe there's only one way it's broken. Just follow the Constitution. We got a president who thinks his phone and his pen turn him into a Congress. He's got an inferiority complex, apparently. I mean, the guy, it's just, every other day he changes his favorite law by email, right? 45 times. He's changed. If a Republican president said, you know, I don't really like that capital gains tax, let's not collect it this year. there would be, that's exactly what he did with what the Supreme Court said was a tax, that mandate. So Washington's broken every which way. We need to use elections like our founders said we should, get up off our couches and go kick those guys out. And so it's not just Washington that's broken. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the hearts and minds of our fellow citizens. Read the Federalist 57, where, Publius says, if the Americans will ever come to tolerate the Congress making a law that obliges everybody but not the Congress, then we'll be prepared to accept anything but liberty. So look in the mirror, let's go out there, and let's take our country back.
Thank you. Delegate Anderson, what are Delegate Comstock's priorities for reducing government's abilities to control our lives?
Well, as I said before, I'm not familiar with every nuance of every issue that she adheres to. That said, I believe that she takes very seriously the constitutional oath that she took as a delegate. The oath is very similar at the state. It's the same one that any of us who have taken it at the federal level have taken. And that is to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And so, given that, I believe that she is singularly devoted to that. I have watched her work. I have watched her vote. I have watched her legislate. I have watched her debate. And I believe that she has solid credentials in order to do those things.
Thank you, Delegate Anderson. Mr. Sabat, despite media assurances to the contrary, our nation is still in a deep economic malaise. Millions are out of work or working in part-time jobs that can't pay the bills. Does Congress have an avenue of opportunity to improve the economic front while the Obama administration is still in power?
They do, but it would be rather difficult. The problem with the administration is, and by the way, I think that's one of the, although it's not an agency, I think a good place to start right now would be the executive branch. The problem we have in this country with getting the economy jump-started is one, overregulation. We have agencies out there, the EPA, the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, just to name two. They propose rules. They go through a comment period from the public, and then they end up finalizing rules exactly the way they propose them, even though they receive comments from the public and from industry showing that there would be severe unintended consequences. What Congress can do is stand up to the administration, which is what they're not doing right now. Speaker Boehner, and I have met Speaker Boehner on a number of occasions. I've had meetings with Speaker Boehner in my position as the head of a housing association, and also Mr. Cantor as well. And I can tell you that they sit there and they don't really understand the issues. If they do, then they're pretty good actors, because they appear not to understand these issues. We need to replace Mr. Boehner and put somebody in there who will stand up to the administration, who will fight back for all of us. And if the president oversteps his bounds, there are remedies, and they're called the courts. And that's something that we need to do. Every time the president of the United States fails to live up to his oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, if he deliberately violates that oath, I think that he should be sued each and every time, and maybe after a while he'll get the message.
Mr. Wassier, back to you. Thomas Jefferson once stated that putting the banks into the hands of the federal government would lead to tyranny. The Federal Reserve has unlimited, unchecked power over our monetary system, and the value of our currency has been steadily dropping for decades. Do you see this as problematic, and if so, how would you address it?
Yeah, great question. The Fed is a very opaque, if not maybe the most opaque institution in the federal government. It's not subject to any scrutiny. I think a good step would be, and I would co-sponsor Congressman Amash's bill, Rand Paul's bill, about the Fed, to get some accountability back. Right now, they have their meetings, and we got assurances from the chairman today, Yellen, that they're going to keep interest rates low, to keep the economy going. But that's not sufficient. We can't just get these announcements from on high about our economy. We need to see how the Fed actually operates. So I think it does need a full-scale audit. Also, one of the other problems with the Fed is it's, the whole premise is, in terms of how they set monetary policy, is flawed. It's based on the Phillips curve, which has unemployment targeting as well as inflation targeting. The only goal of the Federal Reserve should be to give us stable money. And the unemployment targeting is complete and utter Keynesian nonsense. But it's still infected the entire Federal Reserve. So their mandate needs to be changed to get rid of the Phillips curve analysis. They need to be audited. And Congress needs to demand a lot more accountability out of the Fed. Their job is to give us stable money, and they haven't done that. And there's a lot that needs to be fixed there.
Thank you. Delegate Marshall, as discussed earlier, division is rampant on the Republican side of politics. Divisions between liberal, or as some describe them, moderate Republicans. Divisions between social conservatives and fiscal conservatives, and divisions between traditional conservatives and conservative libertarians. Can Democrats be defeated when the Republican Party is so fractured? And how would you bring them together?
You always switch the question on me.
Well, they're different for everybody.
Ronald Reagan was able to do it, to find common ground, and we need to be able to find common ground. Without those kind of efforts, you're not going to get anywhere. Look, I've done this at least 3 times with a bill in 2009, which was supported by liberals and conservatives, and it said that if we were required to adhere to the Homeland Security change in the manufacture of license, the cars that you have, the driver's license. And I put an amendment on there which passed. I said we were not submit to that if the requirements imposed on the manufacturer of these licenses proved to be detrimental to the security of the information that is on there. I got that passed. I got Tim Kaine to sign that. I got